Hello world, welcome to the conversation with the Women of BSV. We are thrilled to have as our guest today, Osmin Callis, COO of the BlockDojo and an absolute superstar with business all around the world. Osmin, welcome to the conversation.
So Osmin, tell us a bit about yourself, because I was like looking at your LinkedIn page earlier, and I know that you came from Nchain to the BlockDojo. Do you want to go back just a little bit and tell us about your working history and what made you end up in the BlockDojo? How did you get there?
Sure. So let's see. I mean, you're quite right. I was prior to the BlockDojo, which I've been with since its inception, which was August last year. I was at Nchain for just under 3 years, working in what was at the time sort of the newly formed commercial team, and the idea there being to commercialize the IP that, of course, as you know probably very well, Nchain had amassed a huge portfolio and had made the decision to explore ways to commercialize it. Getting out there, I kind of likened it to a bit like Willy Wonka throwing open the gates of the chocolate factory, which had hitherto been like unknown, obscure. All you see are kind of puffs of smoke, and you know there's stuff going on in there, you have no idea. And then it sort of overnight made the decision to transition from a very kind of inward-facing, highly productive, but honestly quite secretive company, simply because it didn't need to have a very public facing sort of persona, to something that was now saying, right, we want to engage with the world, we want to share what we do with people and find ways to kind of add value to other businesses. And so it's, I guess, over the intervening 3 years, the conversations and the evolution of those conversations led to, I guess, what is now a much more kind of product focused organization. And so it was really nice to be part of that journey, because I think that that's really where it's at. You know, it's how you kind of define and certainly in the tech world as we know it today, is how you kind of generate and create value, or at least that's the vehicle anyway. Prior to Nchain, I had run 2 businesses by my own modest standards, I would say successfully. And those were blockchain related. I did a lot of consultancy, actually, looking primarily at cryptocurrency, because I was quite intrigued with a request that came in from a friend who had been forced basically to transact in cryptocurrency because a transaction had gone wrong. A person who was supposed to do a professional service for them had asked to be paid in cryptocurrency, refused to be paid in BTC, had refused to be paid in fiat, and they didn't know what to do. So I worked with them to get them set up with a wallet, and then we looked at trading patterns and various ways of kind of analyzing your sort of crypto portfolio. That actually drew on the years of trading that I'd done. Initially, derivatives, futures, a bit of options, but more futures and other sort of similar instruments, managing my own pension portfolio. And then in parallel with that, putting the sort of foundation in place to actually have a product company. I wanted to build a fintech product company because I kind of working backwards here, I'd become acutely aware of the value of the underlying tech, not just the cryptocurrency. So there's the, I guess we could call it like what the world would see as a primary use case for the tech. But then, you know, it was very clear to me that there was a lot that should be exploited. And then I started to follow what was going on within Nchain leading up to the fork. I had Bitcoin Cash anyway, which is why I was kind of aware of what was going on in that sphere. And the reason why I kind of got to that was because I'd been asked by, as part of a kind of consulting that I was doing to analyze sort of financial instruments and assets for high net worth individuals. So I had a few clients, and I was doing that because I had left my career within investment banking and wanted to do something while I was at home with my family, my new family. I knew I didn't want to go back into that world because it was just too demanding. I was very reconciled to closing that chapter. But then everything else that followed was what I've just described. And they've all kind of, I guess all roads have led to where I am now, drawing on all of those different things to sort of participate in the next sort of evolution of the dojo.
Which kind of marries the two together, I suppose, sort of finance and innovation and enterprise and, you know, startups.
Exactly. And the corporate and the professional, exactly. And then years of, because I've been in tech for, who was I saying this to the other day? About 26 years, I think. So just under probably 25 years. So in some way, shape or form, I've always had two things that have kind of been a recurring theme, either some form of analysis, business analysis, financial analysis, data analysis, and actual tech, and often marrying the two. And then entrepreneurism was a kind of another thread that I added to that, and then becoming much more kind of through that, becoming much more kind of commercially focused.
Brilliant. And can you tell us a bit about the BlockDojo as well, for anybody who doesn't know? I mean, we know, but tell us. Yeah.
Sure, happy to. So the BlockDojo is an incubator which focuses on supporting early stage companies. So we are distinct. We operate in a similar space to accelerators, but they focus on later stage companies. We focus on early stage ones. And early stage means, you know, having an idea perhaps and needing support forming a company and getting that idea off the ground. But having done research to prove that, you know, the feasibility of the idea. So it's not literally just woke up this morning and now this afternoon I'm in the dojo. And then through to people who might actually have already developed an MVP, minimum viable product. By the way, please kind of pick me up if I throw in acronyms without explaining them. I have a terrible habit of doing that. So they might have a minimum viable product, which is the core features needed to solve a particular problem that a consumer, be it a business or an individual, is having. But they might not have done that on blockchain, and they might want some sort of blockchain integration, so they could come to us potentially for that sort of support. So the incubator, our incubator, we offer a 12-week program in person where people develop their ideas. It's very intensive because the way our program director likes to describe it, we are essentially condensing 12 months of trial, of experimentation, of eureka moments, of pivoting, of, you know, indecision, and then breakthroughs into 12 weeks. Wow. So they come in, you know, rough, telling their story very badly, kind of perhaps a little bit kind of disconnected, but with something that we can all see the value of, but then finishing up super polished and investor ready.
Sounds fun. I mean, it just sounds so exciting.
Osmin, your explanation, it really rang a bell for me in my mind that the Satoshi Block Dojo is really a great resource for those folks that maybe are in Silicon Valley and have been pitching a startup for a long time, and they haven't yet put that on chain or even realized the efficiencies that they could uncover by putting their app on chain. So it seems like you're there to welcome them to learn more and guide them, and then so choose the best to join this incubator program.
And I think you've put it very well. Yes, we are open to potential, well, not potential, existing entrepreneurs who may potentially, that's where I mean to use the word, already have approached the likes of Y Combinator, Techstars, whoever, or indeed been through their program, but realize that blockchain has additional capabilities that they want to sort of leverage, I guess, in their solutions. So yeah, it works very well in that scenario.
What kind of people or businesses, what kind of industries have you got there at the moment then?
Yeah, good one. So we have 8 companies and it's a real range. So we've got one that focuses on ESG credentials for carbon emissions reporting for buildings to start with in terms of their business.
So
yeah. Oh, thank you. So environmental, social, and governance. So the ESG is, I guess, less a part of what they do, but there's a focus there on funds, companies that have a focus of on ESG, environmental, social, governance, within their sort of business models. And it's almost becoming a vertical of its own, because sustainability is kind of gaining in importance, and no matter your views on climate change, regulation is coming in, and people are being increasingly asked and demanded, I guess, over time to report on certain activities and the status of the materials that they use in buildings and what the carbon emissions are and various other profiles. So the rise of companies that support sort of these reporting requirements and standards, I think, is going to become more and more commonplace. But the ones that use blockchain as their kind of credentialing mechanism, I think, are really well placed because they're going to be able to leverage what the blockchain offers, and get everything else, the auditing, sort of the compute. Whereas if you're kind of trying to reinvent the wheel, you only get what you kind of create, as opposed to all of these sort of other things, if you like. Anyway, so that's that one. And then we've got 1, 2, 3 NFT projects. One very well, which is Richard.
Yeah,
I remember when Richard was talking about the fact that he had this idea, and then he put a couple of slides out there among the sort of the team members at the dojo, and we were like, Richard, you've got to do this. This is literally the hairs on the back of my neck just went up, and you have that feeling every so often. And so that's that one. And then we have a really amazing NFT for brands platform, so slick. 2 seasoned entrepreneurs who've kind of entered the BSV space. That's the thing that is so wonderful about this, is that we've got people who didn't know anything really about blockchain, didn't know anything about BSV, who are leveraging it because it works, and are now advocates for BSV, but they don't belong to any particular kind of, sphere. They're just there to build businesses, and that's it. And
are they building NFTs for brands? Sorry, just to
that's their platform. Yes, to build NFTs for brands, and they're in talks with some really big brands. Am I allowed to say? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, so I'm going to have to check if I am. And if I am allowed to say, then I'll email you back. But having some great conversations around how they can support, basically offering white label solutions to brands who want to create NFTs of their own without having to go out to the likes of Rarible and OpenSea and deal with all of the challenges associated with those. What else? A metaverse. Awesome metaverse game that I think is going to be great for influencers, but not just influencers, real estate. I mean, as you can imagine, the metaverse, the difficulty is not finding applications or things that you could do in the metaverse. Actually, the hard thing is just kind of being really disciplined and focused and saying, we're going to go with this one kind of direction, niche. Whatever. And then we're going to go with that niche and really kind of see it through. we've got a lovely art project, art authentication. The founding team are 2 brothers from Guatemala, beautiful guys, just lovely souls who just love art and just want to restore it to its, I guess, its proper glory alongside contemporary art, which is fine. Their deck has a banana taped to wall saying, "Is this art?" Whereas you've got these guys doing amazing stuff over here. Not to say that it's not, but you know, people shouldn't be denied the opportunity to interact with people who put so much proof of work into their, you know, into their pieces, into their creativity. So that's that. And then
I think authentication is huge, isn't it? It's going to be
authentication is very huge. And yeah, that's a selection anyway. So yeah, really interesting stuff. Yeah.
And our friend Laura Igwe and I as well.
Laura. Oh my gosh, yes, thank you. So I wasn't sure if I should go through the entire list. So mustn't forget Laura with Plus App, which I think as sort of products go, I've got real high hopes for because of its utility. It's the one that I love talking about because of the fact that it's so accessible and so straightforward to explain, because you go, how can this not already exist? You know, this project in terms of, you know, micro consulting and paid by minute, you know, expert advice. And again, it's not the sort of a lack of applications. It's about, okay, well, let's focus on this particular target market, which they've done very well.
I met Laura back at the conference in London, the Coin Geek conference in London in 2019, and she was telling me that idea then. So this is like very close to her heart. I think she's
no, she's been incredibly diligent. Yeah, you're right, in kind of developing it and investing her own sort of time and energy, which is actually one of the things that we look for when, you know, we're speaking to the founders who apply. How much of yourself have you actually invested into the project? Because generally those sorts of projects, they will find a way to make it work no matter what, whether it's with us or, you know, if it turns out that it's not the right vehicle for them. And so that's that kind of dedication, kind of grit, determination is one of the key characteristics, which she has in abundance.
Absolutely. We love Laura. And so tell us a little bit about the actual sort of day-to-day. Is it like workshops? You have speakers in and mentors by the sound of it? What
yes,
happens?
Absolutely. So yes, as those things that you said, absolutely. So the dojo, as we call it, is housed in our office in East London. So the old Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, which has been, my gosh, I don't know if you guys have been to Stratford lately, but that area has been transformed. I mean, the Olympic Park itself was pretty amazing after they hosted the London Olympics, and then tech startups moved in to the old site, the campus, I guess is what you could call it. But yeah, our dojo is there. It's run by our program manager, and he likes the startups to treat it like their office. So even if they're not necessarily you know, consuming any content from a you know, in the form of a workshop or something else, then they still come in and do sort of whatever they need to work on. But there is sort of a structure every week. You have like an all hands, we have a founder story every week, and by all hands, basically a team meeting, like the full team, one sharing how they've gotten on that week, what they're looking for. He works with individual companies, sort of one-on-one. And of course, like you say, we have every week we have a masterclass, sometimes more than once a week, where an expert in a particular sort of domain will come in, give some content that is designed for the group, and then break out into one-to-one sessions for individual teams to basically throw all their questions at that individual for the expert, the workshop leader, for like half an hour, 45 minutes, get as much value out of them as possible, and then move on. So
am I right in thinking you had Dr. Craig Wright last week?
Yes, we did.
Yes,
we did last Thursday. It was great. Yeah. So I mentioned Founder Story, didn't I, just now? Did I mention Founder Story? Yeah. So every week we do Founder Story, and it's a different founder from pretty much any tech startup. Doesn't have to necessarily be blockchain, but we were lucky enough to have Dr. Wright come in and talk about, you know, the early days of creating Bitcoin. But then actually, as you would expect, because there's so much, you know, sort of value that he wants to share, he talks about sort of education and philosophy and, you know, vision for the future and Bitcoin.
Patents presumably is one of his special areas of knowledge as well.
Yes, but
I mean, you know, it could be quite important to
yeah.
start a business. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. But we didn't focus
pin
so
him
much
down
on that.
on
It's
it.
very much no, we didn't. Ah, damn, you're right. We probably should have. I mean, I don't know if it's also because we did have a patent lawyer in the week before, so maybe they kind of asked all the questions that they needed to ask.
But Craig can talk at length about anything, right? That's the thing.
Exactly.
Keeping it on
And he
track
generally,
probably is
and
harder.
he'll just kind of, exactly. And if there's something that kind of, you know, sort of, if the spirit moves him, should we say, in a particular direction, then that's, you know, the topic that, you know, you get to kind of enjoy for that moment. So, yeah.
Sounds wonderful.
I'm curious, Osmin, about your history within technology and business analysis.
Okay.
So what have you observed throughout your career in how the form or the technology used to do analysis has adapted with the times or changed with the times?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. I mean, I haven't used those tools for a long time. I know that they still exist, but I think that they've gotten better, free for a start. So things like Lucid Charts. We used to use Visio, which is part of the Office suite. Of course, you know, it's on a license basis. But you've got, let's say, things like Lucid Charts now, which is really good.
What's a Lucid Chart?
Oh,
going over my head here.
What is that? It's just a software. It's just a software package. You could literally go online, and if you Google Lucid Charts, you get a link to something that could be. It's kind of analogous to, I don't know, Confluence or Jira or Slack that you can just use. You
create like a productivity tool. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Except for that, you use it to design analysis artifacts. So
it's a different world, this
analysis. You find it's still the pen and paper most often.
No, I didn't. Well, it depends on the kind of analysis that you're doing. Yes, there will be, of course, an element, you're right, of kind of jotting your thoughts down and starting to define relationships between actors. But actually, because you're right, I guess going back, when you're thinking about defining user stories, you would have just done pen and paper. You would have just had a little stick man as your user, and you're sort of defining a use case. So if you're doing a diagram and trying to figure out the relationships, you probably would start that way. And then you'd find then you'd use a slightly involved, relatively sophisticated, but I don't know, those packages were also clunky back in the day. They're generally better now. Just to draw things out visually.
Like sort of flowcharts.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Exactly. But you still can't do it in Word. You do need something that's kind of relatively specialist.
I used to like be master of the Gantt chart. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that kind of.
Yeah, so that's a good tool for project management, actually. But so, for example, if you want to define a user story as as a TV presenter, I need to be able to reach my audience. And so you might have a little stick man for the TV presenter, and then you might have a line, and then you'd have a little symbol which describes the one-to-many relationship with an audience of many people that comes off that sort of at the end of that line, branching out to lots of little people. So then you can show that I have a one-to-many relationship with these individuals, and I don't know, I want to send emails to all of my followers automatically at the end of my broadcast. And imagine that capability didn't exist, and you had to design that. So you'd start to capture what the story is behind what the user is looking to achieve. Hence the user story, very kind of tied in with design. The thing, I guess, actually, to your question, Rory, that's occurring to me as well, is that there's much more overlap now because back in the day when business analysis was and still is very much an in-demand sort of skill set, you didn't have product managers, and they didn't, or depending on whether you're kind of doing sort of front end stuff or back end, you still didn't have product managers. Now you've got product managers, product owners, designers, product design. So a lot of what you would have done as a business analyst is kind of overlaps a lot with product management and product design, product development, in fact, because it's still the same questions that you would ask if you were a product developer trying to develop a product. Who's using it and how do they need to use the product? What problem is this product solving? And then, of course, you've got architects as well who would design the flow of data from, I don't know, a person or a system to another. And that's actually changed a bit. There's a lot more kind of overlap between those new roles which have kind of evolved to cover, I guess, the same outcomes, really, whereas before it was just us, the business analysts, and we had to do a lot more. So I'm kind of glad I don't do that so much
physical
anymore.
Whiteboards back in the day, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah.
There's definitely still whiteboarding sessions, which I remember doing with when I was back at Nchain. We had several product managers, and there would be some whiteboarding sessions to kind of kick things off. So yeah, I'm glad that hasn't gone away, because that brainstorming, that human interaction, no matter how good the tools are, you can't beat a good old brainstorm, good old, sort of human,
many brains,
human element. Exactly.
And
and that thing that just happens when you're all in a room together, and then you're just like, this is, got an idea, and it's all kind of becoming something that's greater than, some of its parts. It's
one of the
quite amazing
things about the dojo is that you do it in person. Like, it's not, you're not all videoing in, are you?
That's right.
That's kind of gone back to the old days.
Exactly. Very, in person. That was the decision. And it was a difficult decision because, it's still kind of coming towards the end of the worst of the kind of the COVID period. And we weren't really sure how much longer that was going to go on. But our chairman was absolutely determined to do in person. And part of the reason for that was because one of our advisors is the ex-UK CEO for Textiles, which is the largest incubator stroke accelerator in the world. And they were like, it's way better in person. Just more things happen when you're in a room together. But we struggled. We were thinking, but what if, but COVID and this and that. And thankfully, by the time we kind of got everything lined up, things were starting to kind of settle down again. So it feels like that was the right choice for sure.
And what's happening? Is it the next 2 weeks people are starting to pitch to investors? Is that the stage of the process that you're at now? Yeah,
that's right. So that's happening right now. So towards the end of sorry about the back. Can you hear the background noise?
No.
Okay, good. Oh, good. That was my son running around. So actually, let's see. Next week is the last week of this current 12-week program, and this week is the week exactly as you're describing, where we get our startups in front of investors, and they pitch. So Laura, all the guys I mentioned, Buzzmint, the Soundoshi team, the music NFTs, I didn't mention those at the outset. They're all pitching to a room full of investors, and then we sit down for a nice lunch and they network and answer more in-depth questions. And they're so super prepped because they will have been given a brief with basically 70 or so questions that investors could ask, and they have to have answers to every single one.
Oh, nice.
So,
it's
good.
So how long is the presentation that they do then? Is that like about an hour?
No, it's like 5 minutes for the pitch.
And answer 70 questions.
Right. So the idea being that, because it's a good point you make there, Diddy. So each team will present their pitch with a deck of slides that they will have prepared for the purpose. And then, because it's actually quite a long sort of session, there's a bit before the pitches happen. So they get to sort of network a bit with investors, then the pitches, and then afterwards, they have the rest of the afternoon to field all the questions coming from investors.
So they should
be able to nail it in 5 minutes to make it very clear what the proposition is in
the
story.
Very intense, isn't it? To have to like boil it down and distill it into 5 minutes.
Super intense, exactly. It is, and it's one after the other as well. No, otherwise it'd be hours, because there's 8 teams, you see, so it's 40, 5 minutes each, 40 minutes, so it's 20 minutes and then a little break and then 20 again.
And I suppose the point is, if you can't explain it in 5 minutes, you haven't kind of like crystallized the idea.
Nailed it. Exactly that. Exactly.
Sorry, Rory.
Oh, pardon me. Yes. What is the outcome that you've seen from others that have participated in the past?
So this is actually our very first cohort that's currently undergoing this process that I just described, and is coming to the end of our very first program. So if you check back in a few weeks, I can let you know. But they are very soon going to transition into our, well, we call it our alumni program, but we don't require them to stay with us for another 12 weeks or anything like that. For those that are from overseas, they'll go back to their home countries. Those that are staying here will check in with us and continue to receive guidance and coaching, and actually other super important stuff around sort of the operational aspects of their business, the first hire, for those that get funded, it's going to be super important for them to be quite rigorous with how they spend the funds. Do you spend it on tech? Do you go out and, I don't know, subscribe to some very expensive platform? There's going to be temptation all over the place, so they're going to have to be super rigorous.
I was going to say, because it sounds like a lot of money, but when it's not really, is it? When you get right down to the day-to-day
wages, exactly. So but it's kind of intended as a kind of a guide for them to spend, at least to keep them, or at least to help them gain traction for the 12 months that follow roundabout. And if they need, to raise again within that time, that's fine. So there's that sort of £140,000 raise, and then around about 12 months, as I say, and then anywhere from sort of 1.2, even all the way up to 2 million would be the sort of the seed round. And then after that, you've got Series A, but we generally expect them to be really kind of self-sufficient by the time they get to the seed round.
When people first apply to you, I mean, you should say, like, you've got people from overseas as well. So do you hold their hand in the respect of finding them some accommodation and everything? Because you've got to be in London, haven't you? For the cohort.
That's right. You do need to be able to come to London, and that's so as part of the sort of onboarding, we share information with them about the various sort of accommodation options that are available. We need to sort of time things so that they can apply for visas, but it's once they're here, then they will receive £10,000 as say cash that will allow them to focus. And we don't try to handhold too much. I mean, there's so much going on in the dojo anyway. There are socials, there are team breakfasts, CTO lunches, CEO lunches, and mentoring. That's a huge part of what we do. So they're very kind of busy and occupied. So they're not kind of, feeling too kind of lost or whatever,
It's a big thing, isn't it? If you're quite young and you've not moved away from home before, and then you go to thousands of miles to a big city, and it's
very true. I mean, we've not had anyone who's that young where they're kind of a little bit kind of starry-eyed, but it could happen. You're right. I think potential for a future team. There may be some students coming over, but then they'll be in a group anyway, so they'll be able to keep each other company.
And are you making links with universities and things? Because I feel like I've seen a few tweets put out that you guys have been going around visiting universities.
Yeah, we are. So we are. That's it. So we do a university roadshow, and for us, it's super important because we partner with Firenex Corporation, and Robin is a great example of
he's wonderful.
When things when all the stars align and you have that very kind of unique mix of business kind of just a general acumen. I don't really know where he gets it from, because it's not like he's run hundreds of business, but he has this kind of,
he's not very old, yeah, but he's an old soul.
It's like, he is a very old soul, exactly that. And so so it makes sense for us to, number one, it makes a great sort of conversation starter, and it's a good one to say, look, here's what you could be doing this, you could be this guy. And also, I guess you're going to assume that Robin's, as unique as he is not the only Robin out there. And we like to find them and work with them, not just Robins, but also older entrepreneurs who've built companies before. Those guys are great because, they just get on with it. They've been around the block. They know their stuff, and they're just there to make stuff happen. So we just get out of there.
The good word about BSV into the universities, I think, is kind of a big deal, isn't it? Because they've not got any baggage or preconceptions necessarily about blockchain. They're a bit more receptive to.
I would have thought they have massive preconceptions.
We speak to some of the societies, like the engineering societies, computer science societies. It's great debates, actually.
Really
can ensue from some of the and so when we've been there, we've long in sort of past the sort of the allotted time period, then into the pub and talking about all kinds of stuff to do with merits of this chain versus this chain, and but does it scale, and environmental sort of considerations, or but have you heard about this network and they charge X amount, and but proof of stake, and some of the conversations can get quite involved, and we really like those because it keeps us on our toes, and actually it's just great to engage with people, because it's as much about answering questions directly and hoping that somebody is already thinking about starting a business and wanting to apply, but also planting seeds, knowing that these guys, we're getting them at this stage, or getting in front of them at this stage, and even if we don't see them applying to the dojo immediately, chances are that just hopefully planted a seed that they would that would take root at some point, not too long after.
Is it fairly concentrated at the moment, the area with which you're kind of going to universities? Because I mean, it's a big travel expense, isn't it?
It is.
Even though we're a small country.
Well, exactly. But we did actually initially plan on doing just the London universities, but then where the conversation came from, our deal flow manager, who's done an amazing job getting us into all of the universities and developing the relationships and the links, I actually felt that we were just leaving out amazing talent, and that those guys are often just used to being a bit kind of overlooked because they're not London. So we collectively said, well, we can't have that. These guys really want to engage with us, whereas there could be some London universities that are so used to kind of like a beauty parade of companies and incubators and accelerators. They're like, yeah, sure, kind of whatever. Whereas these other guys who get very little attention were so keen, and, as I say, super bright and smart, that we felt it would be madness not to engage with them.
That's
good. That's good to know.
Have you had any applications from you?
Yes, we have. We have had some applications, and the way in which I'm finding that it works really well is that even if the team or the individuals aren't quite ready, again, there's absolutely nothing to stop them applying. They'll get the feedback, always constructive, and if they're not quite ready, go away, implement the feedback, do a bit more research into whatever area, and then come and apply again, hopefully kind of with even more insight. So,
and like you said, there's no actual restriction on what industry or what genre you're coming from in the first place, because most businesses, whatever they are, can fit into something blockchain related, can help with your business to accelerate it.
Right.
And
it has to be a sound business model, and that's where a lot of the initial evaluation actually is spent looking at the business model. Does it have a potential, even if it's, say, for example, one where you're not seeing profitability on day one. So, for example, Twitter. Imagine if Twitter didn't exist today, but that has a massive audience reach. So, you know, you will evaluate it as if you were sort of an investor thinking about, okay, well, how would this kind of deliver a return? How does this actually generate any value? How does this actually add something to the world? Not just, you know, turning a quick buck, because it can take time really to get to that stage. So it has to be worth it.
And Osmin, if there are investors out there that are interested in venture capital in this industry, then what are some of the incentives for them reaching out to the BlockDojo?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, investors in the UK, so there are two sort of areas where I think that they'll benefit. One is the SEIS scheme. I think we touched on that briefly at the start, didn't we? Did we mention SEIS? I can't remember. Okay, well, if we didn't, yes. So now I can't remember what SEIS stands for. I probably should know that. Have to Google it. If anyone wouldn't mind Googling while I talk, then they can say what it stands for. But yeah, so SEIS is a
attract angel investors. Sorry,
yes, exactly.
Yeah. So
what does it stand for?
Oh no, let me see. What is well, you get a tax relief. At least that's what it tells me. So it's Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. That's it.
Thank you. I should probably know that. Yes. So so the idea there is to protect your investment to the tune of 75%. So investors who invest under SEIS have a lot of then the idea was it's a government sponsored initiative to encourage investors to take risk, and early stage startups are an area that makes most sense for the government to sort of to underwrite, if you like. So that's what they do. So that's very attractive to UK.
75%.
Well, it's like EIS, which is for the film industry.
Yeah.
They have to kind of, the government also have like a tax relief kind of system
same
for them
thing.
in
It's
place.
Yeah. Exactly the same.
That I know a little bit about, but
exactly. But it is exactly the same scheme.
It's because it's such a high risk industry, I think, as well, and at least with the film industry, you can't guarantee that you are going to get a return, but you can guarantee you're going to spend a good couple of million to make a film with, you know. So I think that's where it comes in from.
Exactly that. There is a pretty horrific statistic out there about 98% of startups failing at a certain point within their journey. And so it's incredibly difficult for them to get investment, whereas something like this is intended to kind of, you know, lubricate that process somewhat and make it for a much more kind of liquid market.
It's very brave of people, I think. It's very brave to be a startup, especially, you know, like you say, because
absolutely.
It's your faith and your drive and your passion that's going to, you know, take it forward.
100%. So that's the first thing. The second thing is how we see the actual industry itself going, the trend, you know, in terms of triggers and drivers like CBDCs, like, you know, IoT, the data economy.
Okay, central bank digital currencies, insert of things. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, central bank digital currencies. Thank you, Ruth. Yes, so eventually when all of these things, I think, create that kind of perfect storm, companies are, the way we see it, you know, companies are going to be faced with two choices. They'll either innovate in those spaces and disrupt themselves, or they'll buy a company that's already done it. So we're building the companies that we think the bigger players will either want to buy in future or invest in as part of the sort of the wave.
How about investors from other countries, such as the US or around the world? Can they also participate in the dojo?
They can, but not directly under SEIS, because that is for UK investors only.
Okay.
But our Chief Investment Officer, James, who's also our international guy, is actually opening and exploring opening other dojos abroad. So we're doing our research to find sort of the best locations, and the plan is to open multiple dojos in sort of key areas. So it would make sense to have one in each of the time zones, for example.
Yes,
South
and
Florida.
welcome to Atlanta.
Singapore, Florida, yeah, London.
yeah, that sort of thing. So that is the plan. And then that'll make life so much easier if you're a US investor, or if you're an investor in, I don't know, the Middle East or Sub-Saharan Africa or Asia, you know. So yeah, it's a good idea. Makes sense, right?
What kind of industry or business would you like to see get on board? Is there something specifically, you know, that's like a passion of yours, or something you find that would be heartfelt and you would really like to see?
Good question. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's the obvious players like the fintechs. It would be really good to have an interesting fintech company. But in terms of my own personal preference, gosh, I see so many. Sustainability is some really interesting plays there. Let's be specific vertical, but in my sort of years of research working, you know, directly for in a professional capacity at blockchain organizations, you start to become acutely aware of the state of certain industries in terms of them not being very kind of digitally mature. So, for example, the construction industry is a really difficult industry in many ways to digitize. But for me, it feels like it's just so ripe sort of with opportunity for that reason. Of course, you know, nothing that is, I think, a sort of a high price comes easily. So I think it's not going to necessarily be a straight line there, but definitely industries like that. But then really interesting, I guess, projects that enhance people's experiences of life and living. You know, I know we talk often about, you know, banking the underbanked or whatever, but I love the idea of things that broke my heart. You know, one of our teams describing the 120% fees that they charge in places like Cameroon just to transact really sort of everyday sort of basic sort of commodities. And I think that that's shocking. Disintermediating some of these kind of predatory players in the market, I think is something that I'd really sort of welcome. And those scenarios that just are self-perpetuating because, you know, kind of stuck in these cycles of poverty that make it very difficult for people to come together. Oh, I tell you one that's coming to mind that I actually had as an idea, but ones where it encourages people to come together as groups to work or do something together. And a really good example, I'm kind of putting an idea out there. So if to do this one, I was going to, but I just had too many ideas on the go. And then obviously I changed direction. It's a concept of a thing called partner, and it's a Caribbean word. And essentially it's a way of kind of communal saving. So everybody puts, let's say the five of us, we want to save towards a goal, like towards Christmas or whatever. We all put, I don't know, 10 quid each into the pot. And then one of us will withdraw the whole amount. So each of us gets £50 every so often. And then, you know, what this allows is for a scenario where none of us might ever really find that we've got £50 available at any one point, but collectively we do. And so using things like Bitcoin or blockchain to create those sorts of, because they do exist right now.
Savings goals,
but kind of responsible. So that's one thing. But imagine if you could do that distributed across, you know, you've got family in Canada, you've got family in, I don't know, Mumbai, wherever you are, and you can still do that safely, even if you're all, you know, you might have slightly different banking provisions in each of those countries. But this is the great thing about Bitcoin, is that it creates that amazing access.
You can save up to see each other or something, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, the use case around that, I haven't researched for a long time, but it always intrigued me as a really lovely thing. also anything that promotes the reduction in waste, and actually looking after our planet without getting caught up in some of the kind of more ideologically focused debates, because I think that they can actually do more harm than good. But just there's nothing wrong with just wanting to be a responsible human being, and things that kind of enhance and sort of accelerate those goals, I think are fantastic, you know, because I do worry, you know, about sort of what we're leaving behind for our children, even though I'm also incredibly hopeful. Responsibility and accountability, I think, are where it starts, really.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. I mean, really great goals. Yeah, no,
yeah, so
yeah, and all really doable on the blockchain because of the accountability and the, you know, the fact that it's all logged and taken care of. Yeah, no, like an escrow system. I like that idea. I think it's wonderful ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true, actually. Once you kind of get going, you realize, gosh, there are so many different sort of ideas or sort of applications that you could quite happily see. And just oh, it doesn't have to be always so worthy. Just, it's fun, just brings joy, just simple things. Of course, yes, things that are profitable. But I think if you give something that enhances somebody's experience, they'll always come back.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
and thank you so much for your time and sharing everything with us.
We really appreciate
it. So welcome. It's been lovely chatting with you guys. I can't believe it's taking a long time to this stage. I'm sorry if it's
hopefully you'll come back after the cohort and everybody is
absolutely.
Tell us about the people who got funded and
for sure. Love to. And then can give you maybe a sneak peek into cohort 2. Yeah. Excellent. So the light's fading here as well, so it's all starting to. You guys will look so
Oh, thank you again.
Well, it was a pleasure hearing about everything that you're doing, Osmin. Thank you so much.
You guys,
I love the sustainability that sounds like it's so built into everything. Coming together in these intentional ways and intentional communities and all that stuff is such a part of the future. So I absolutely love that idea of being able to communally fund, you know, your community. That's awesome. So thank you so much.
Me too. I just hope somebody does it now.
Yeah. Well, it's still something, you know, that if we are the ones we've been waiting for, right? I mean, there's still opportunity for you to create that. And
very
true.
Very true.
Value in it, they'll just come help you. I mean,
you're right. You're absolutely right.
We'll keep it on the back burner.
No, thank you. So if anyone wants to apply, applications are still open for the next few days, and then they close for cohort 2. So if it's all right, I just wanted to kind of pop that in there.
Just tell us, is it BlockDojo.com? I'm not even sure.
BlockDojo.io.
Right.
And then you can apply from within the website.
BlockDojo.io, which will be in the description box. So if you need it, it will be in the description box.
Nice. Okay. Thank you very much, ladies. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Speak to you very soon. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.